Alright, so I feel like I've discovered quite the conspiracy going on in the Nintendo house. Fire Emblem Three Hopes, I'm pretty sure, has been being planned and rolled out right under our noses ever since the trailers of Fire Emblem Three Houses began. And we all just sat here and waited for it. It's Wisp, and I just wanted to talk about this. Obviously, it's not that big of a conspiracy, and a lot of people did predict or hope for Fire Emblem Three Houses to get a spin-off or even specifically a Warriors game. Though I do think that most people, including myself, who wanted Three Houses to come to the Warriors format, wanted Fire Emblem Warriors 2, which would have Three Houses characters, but carry on the plot line or at least continue the crossover feel. And to me, half the appeal was characters who could never meet each other outside of this spin-off actually getting a chance to interact, and I was really hoping to see other characters not from Three Houses meet and talk to these people. But I can't say I'm surprised, and I feel like a lot of people aren't that surprised about it because it wasn't exactly spelled out for us, but there really were a lot of signs going through. I mean, the quickest way I think to look at this is to just track the timeline, and Fire Emblem Warriors was created in 2017 by Koei Tecmo, who I'll refer to as KT because I have no way to know if I'm pronouncing their name correctly. So KT developed a little demo. They're running around a big field as Crom, and they are killing mooks, just some random NPC characters. They show that to Nintendo, and Nintendo says, yes, do that. So they make Fire Emblem Warriors going from there. They include a lot of Fates because it's the newest game, and Shadow Dragon Arcania characters because it's the first game slash remakes of the first game, and mix it all together, and there you go. The game did really well. The Warriors franchise doesn't expect to be the 10 million sellers, but they got over a million sales, which makes them one of the few Fire Emblem titles to have done that at the time. They were in the company of Fire Emblem Fates and Awakening. And I think only two versions of Fates. I don't think Revelations hit a million on its own. So that's pretty impressive. But it did well. It introduced some new characters that were not that well received. People didn't love them. Left it on a small cliffhanger, gave you hope that things could get better, and the characters promised to meet one more time in the future. Then they disappeared. And we were kind of left thinking, okay, that could potentially be it, but obviously the doors were open for more. After that, we find out that KT is working closely with IS, Intelligent Systems, on the next Fire Emblem game, as in a mainline Fire Emblem game being developed partially out of house or with another studio's input. That was the first time that had been done, and it was with KT. That was Three Houses, of course. Turned out really well, people loved it, and now here we are with KT taking the reins on Fire Emblem Three Hopes. But I don't think that was happenstance at all. First off, if any Fire Emblem game was geared towards a solo warriors game, Three Houses already has the feel of several different nations or several different sides, beliefs, theocracies. That's not appropriate there. Coming together and meeting in battle. Pretty much how Warriors works. Fire Emblem has had similarly complex political sides before, but this time it really did feel like an all-out war with every nation for itself. And there was some intertwining teams here and there, but they all made it pretty clear that they were looking after themselves the whole time. So the story, it feels right for it. And maybe it's not the only one that would work, but it was a pretty obvious one that would work if you had to pick. But this was the first game to introduce battalions. Yeah, we had random people who looked like default NPCs following around our main characters in the main game. If you don't play Warriors, that might not be so crazy to you, but that's how it works. You play as a character, and the generic characters follow you around, and they'll stay at like outposts or the forts, and the enemies you fight are 90% made up of them, and there's a few named characters and bosses that you fight as well. And they built that into the design of the game. Even in the trailers, we can see that they're going for the same design, which is just great because why change the design of what we already know as our battalions when it makes sense? But it's been there. Okay, and if you're not sold, I get it. But the marketing. Fire Emblem Three Houses marketed very heavily to telling you to play one of the Black Eagle's routes. Some serious spoilers ensue if you haven't already clicked away for spoiler reasons. Now's the time to do it. But Edelgard was shown around by Lithor, the player character, from the beginning of the marketing. And at first, we didn't really know who she was. We just knew that she's the person, KT or IS or whoever was in charge of that part of marketing, constantly showed Byleth with. So, go figure, we know the twist. She ends up being the person who starts the war. KT eventually mentions, casually in an interview, they're not trying to vilify anybody here, but they said part of the inspiration for Three Houses was to give you the opportunity to play the villain's route. It's kind of weird to me that Edelgard was the one most marketed for, aside from that. But what still stands out is that these types of games, they really do love to redeem the characters that people love, and I'm not giving a stance on Edelgard versus Dimitri, especially those two. I know Claude also factors in, but I'm not as scared of his fans. But I'm not giving a stance on the Edelgard versus Dimitri debates. However, if you're analyzing the stories, Dimitri's story is largely about redemption and talking about how everybody can eventually be redeemed. He reaches his hand out to Edelgard, hoping greatly to redeem her, whether or not you see her as a villain. In her route, she doesn't really believe in redemption, and she doesn't offer that to everybody. She is kind of quickly tearing the world apart so that she can rebuild it anew under her beliefs. And Dimitri doesn't really get a chance at that same level of redemption in her route. But also, she never changes. She doesn't have any... She has development, but she doesn't have an arc of looking back at her past and deciding to change. She's constantly plowing forward, and that's why people love her. So I'm not trying to say that as a bad thing, but it is surprising to me that they made a villain-like character, and they also made them prolific. They're in all the marketing. She's always there. But KT didn't give her any redemption. So I always thought that was strange, and then now here we are, getting a golden route, which will automatically give her some sort of redemption. It will at least stop her before she tears the world apart, and I'm sure she's still going to get her way, right? I mean, Dimitri's ending has the same effect. It's just instead of a fast, complete overturn of the system, he does it through generations and raising people to not follow the crests. They have the same end goal, just the direct goals are very different. So a golden route between the two will be easy, and Claude, he really just wants everyone to stop being so racist, so I'm pretty sure that he can work into there without really needing too much persuasion. He definitely doesn't want them collapsing in on themselves, and then he has to deal with the rubble of all that. And then one of the other things that really stuck out to me with the way Three Houses was handled is if you look outside of Three Houses, there are countless examples of Fire Emblem games that IS gives very open interviews about. So, Awakening, we know basically everything that went on in the development room, from the people fighting over if it was too safe or too different or too crazy. We know down to the concept that Inigo had blue hair in the concept room, to Crom's original concepts with the more reddish cape. I mean, we know a lot of where that development went down, and we have some concept art for the main characters of Three Houses, and we have a little bit of talks about the routes, and we know that Silver Snow was the first one written to its completion, but they've kind of played coy with a lot of questions when we ask about world building. when people asked about Holst, a character that everyone's been wanting to see, they would say things like, well, the world feels bigger if you don't answer every single thing. Oh, well, what happened to Dimitri through the 5-year time skip that we don't talk about in the main game? Well, the world feels bigger if we don't talk about it. We are now getting a game that takes place probably 2 to 3 years into that time skip, and obviously a different timeline version of that time skip. I'm not saying that Holst will be in it, but we know that at the very least Judith is back and Randolph is back. We're getting characters that aren't even the main cast to at least appear in the game. Holst may or may not, of course. But a lot of these things that they've been dodging was always because they were hoping to release this new game. In fact, in Japan, it doesn't even have a different title. It's just called Fire Emblem Warriors, and then the same subtitle. I'll find an image of it because I don't know it. But I know the direct translation is also the same. It's just whether or not the word Warriors is there. In the US, we changed it a little bit, but the logo and the 3H is still there perfectly. This was certainly always on their mind. Might not have gotten approved right away, but I'm pretty sure that after the sales came out, after this was their chart-topping Fire Emblem game, it was not a hard debate for them to have. I mean, way back when we saw concept art of Gronder Field, it can't possibly happen, and there was a lot of debate on whether or not that was a Warriors game, and that debate's still up. I mean, this doesn't prove that that concept art is related to it. Could be a coincidence still. But it definitely does look like this has been something they've been thinking of for the entire duration of this. For that reason, I'm a little confused about some things. I mean, they made this cast kind of large, but you meet them all at the very beginning, so it doesn't feel that large. But they made all the students feel kind of integral to the house that they're in. And now, we're getting this golden route that's taking place in a separate game. But for this to work, we kind of need all 24 of them, at the very least, to be represented. I'd also love to see Knights of Saros, Ashen Wolves. There's a lot more characters, but at the very least, the 24 feel completely vital. But I actually think that it's very possible that we get all 24. I don't want to get too much into roster talks. I'm saving that for another day since we haven't had any information in the last month, and everyone's been thinking about the roster this whole time. I want to kind of get an idea of where it could go. Now, another big thing going on here, and I've said it many times, this is a golden route. This is a golden route. I mean, I've always struggled with golden routes in games because it feels like it invalidates other playthroughs, especially Fire Emblem games, which I tend to play multiple times because I like to play Fire Emblem and do these challenge runs. I'll talk about my challenge runs in another video, but I don't just play a Fire Emblem game one time, usually. So having a golden route kind of makes it harder to go through and play those, Fates being the worst example of it, in my opinion. Once you have that, the other routes feel more useless. But the fact that they're separating this into its own game is amazing to me, because now I can play through Fire Emblem Three Houses in whichever route feels right for the challenge run and not feel bad about missing the golden route that is Three Hopes. It'll also help us to hopefully realize that Three Hopes is probably not the exclusive canon, like it is a canon route. But maybe KT will change that. Actually, maybe if they want to use Legendary Byleth or Brave Byleth for something, stuff like that, they need a canon. Well, they'll go with Three Hopes. That's the canon now. But these are all canon timelines or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if this will become the objective canon. I feel like it'll just be a potential canon, but it will be like canon in the same sense that both Crimson Flowers and Azure Moon are both canon, if that makes any sense. And as for the box art, yes, Male Byleth is gone. That's not the final nail in his coffin as a playable character. Male Corrin wasn't on the box art for Warriors 1, and Male Robin was in the story. He wasn't on the box art because he's not the main character of Awakening. They stuck it to the main characters for the most part for the box art. But Male Robin's in the story and female isn't. It's possible that female Byleth is the story character. This golden route cannot happen if Byleth is a man. Maybe that's just how they decided it. I don't know. But either way, once you beat the game, you'll be able to change your skin and run around as him. I also think it's possible that Male Byleth will be playable for the story. You'll still get to pick, But when they made the box art, they didn't want to clutter it with both Byleths, especially since they chose to have Byleth in an action shot. They didn't need to, right? But three houses, the three lords were crossing weapons, and Byleths were stagnant, which is why we had room for both of them. But this time around, Byleth has their own rival for the first time in this game. Like, three houses didn't have it. Byleth has a rival. So Byleth needed to be in the action shot in their minds, and for that reason, they had to pick a Byleth. Female won CYL by like twice as many votes. The female got the statue. Female Byleth is kind of just more popular at this point, so that's who they're going to put on the box. I don't think it means male won't be playable. I still think he'll be in the story. If he's not, I don't really care what gender Byleth is. I didn't get that attached to a specific gender. I like the Byleth and Shamir ship, which is why I mainly play as male Byleth. But outside of that, which I'm not assuming we'll get marriages in Three Hopes, just because it'd be hard to see them all. So I don't think we're getting marriages in Three Hopes. And for that reason, I really don't care if Byleth is male or female. I'm a little used to using he for Byleth, since that's mainly how I'm a little used to using he for Byleth, since that's how I mainly played. But that's a habit I can shake. I feel like if Byleth is female exclusively in the story, I'll get over that. I'll be able to fix that for my future videos. If Byleth is playable and you can choose for the story, I'll probably default to he, but I'll try to be a little more gender neutral, since, I know not everyone's going to recognize he for Byleth, especially after the box art is female only. But I don't think that's something to be concerned about right now. I really do think they'll both be in the story, and if not, then they'll both be playable. And sorry that they won't both be in the cutscenes, but at least they'll both be there, which is cool. Actually, I wonder if that's going to affect CYL 7. If anyone's going to be like, oh, let's vote for male Byleth so that people start to love him again. I don't think so. I don't think male Byleth has very good odds right now. I mean, I'm not trying to be disparaging. Sorry, I just really like to talk about CYL. Anyway, that's sort of where I'm at, I really feel like this wasn't an accident. This has been on their minds for a long time. Even the history mode maps hopefully are coming back, but so far it seems that they've been replaced by the war table, and we saw Edelgard doing her march on Garreg Mach Monastery at the very beginning of the game, by the way, so this is starting at like in between part 1 and 2 for the most part. Anyway, we see her attacking Garreg Mach Monastery, and that war table is going to have most likely like side missions and just lore blurbs, which is really cool. They did that for Age of Calamity, if you've played that, and it was amazing. My only issue was that it didn't have as big of a post game because they didn't have adventure mode maps. So this war table is going to be amazing, but if they take out history maps for it, that's going to hurt. But it makes sense that they would, because you're supposed to play three houses before playing warriors, whereas for the other games, you were not necessarily. For warriors, by the way, like for warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors, for example, you were not expected to play the main games before this. This time you are. So history maps aren't needed, but I'd still like something similar to it, even if it's just reliving our memories, or if it retells Warriors 1 just for the fun of it. I don't know, because this isn't really a sequel, so the storyline of it doesn't matter. This is a spiritual successor, more so. No character crossover, no story crossover. It's a brand new game. It's just in the same vein, I guess, as the first one. Anyway, those are my closing thoughts. I'm excited for the game, hesitantly. I'm sad that we might not get history maps, and I'm upset that we're losing the crossover characters. But this is an easy day one buy, and I can't wait to get more information on it. I hope I'm wrong. It's possible that they throw in some random characters for no reason post-game, and if it's post-game, they really don't have to explain it, right? Just, boom, there's a wormhole. Boom. Boom. Wormhole. Characters pour through. We just get, like, the Gleamstone holders, right? We get like Crom and Marth, Corrin and Ryoma and Xander. That's not like a superstar cast, but whatever. It's cool. I'm really excited for this game, so I could keep going on. I'll stop myself there. But thank you all, and I can't wait to talk to you about this more. Have a great rest of your period of time until I see you next.